Welcome to Inside India. I'm JP Ong, and here are your headlines. The IMF upgrading India's 2025 growth outlook slightly, citing resilience in the face of tariffs, but they trimmed their forecast for the next fiscal year. The earnings season continues as well. IT services giant Tech Mahindra follows its peers to sound upbeat about the outlook, despite cautious spending in the North American market. And Google makes its biggest ever investment in India, weighing in with a $15 billion data center bet, even as trade tensions simmer between Washington and New Delhi. Good morning, and we take a look at how Asian markets are now trending in the midweek. In the morning session, rallying cry is go green. You can see various shades of gains actually across major markets. The Nikkei 225 up by about 1.3%, with the tech-heavy Kospi also trading about 1.8% of the green, outshining most of its peers. A lot of this also riding on some dovish comments from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell that might be hinting at future rate cuts sooner rather than later. Even the Hang Seng also lifting itself out of its funk, up by 0.9%, with the Shanghai Composite looking quite steady, Eddie, up by about 0.1%. Indian markets also set to come in line in about 45 minutes, and we take a first snapshot of what Nifty futures are gifting us today. And so far, we are seeing that once again, it is foreshadowing gains today of about 140 points. Mind you, they are coming off a two-day losing streak, actually, with slight intraday slippages, and we'll see if they can actually break out of the funk in the Wednesday session. The Indian rupee also looking a bit firmer today at 88.73 against the U.S. dollar. We also heard from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell yesterday, speaking at a business conference in Philadelphia yesterday. Powell reiterating that policymakers are taking a, quote, meeting-by-meeting approach, and that the economy in America is overall holding firmer than expected. He also suggested that the Fed could stop reducing the size of its balance sheet soon. That is, restart quantitative easing, or QE, as well.
Our long-stated plan is to stop balance sheet runoff when reserves are somewhat above the level we judge consistent with ample reserves conditions. We may approach that point in coming months, and we are closely monitoring a wide range of indicators to inform this decision.
The International Monetary Fund lifted its global growth outlook to 3.2% for this year and left the projection unchanged for 2026. The IMF also said growth held up better than expected, thanks to most countries choosing not to retaliate against the United States President Donald Trump's tariffs. Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva says that this restraint has avoided a trade war and kept global trade moving. Despite the forecast uplift, the IMF warned that stretched tech valuations and any renewed U.S.-China trade conflict could test that resilience. Now, speaking of U.S.-China tensions, let's get out to our China reporter, Elaine Yu in Hong Kong. Elaine, what's the latest in the tit-for-tat that we're seeing between the two countries? And is there a food fight brewing between them in the latest turn of events?
Indeed, JP, in the ever-growing list of things that the U.S. and China are sparring over, it's now soybeans again and cooking oil. Trump on Truth Social said that he believes China is purposefully not buying American soybeans, and that's causing difficulty for American soybean farmers. And now he says that the U.S. is considering terminating business with China on cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution. He said we can easily produce those cooking oil ourselves and don't need to buy it from China. So soybeans were once described as a relatively low-hanging fruit in the trade spat, but it's now back to being a flashpoint. And indeed, China hasn't bought any American soybeans in this fall season's harvest. But in September, their imports of soybeans surged to the second highest level on record, according to Barclays. And that's a lot of sourcing from Brazil, but also some recent purchases from Argentina, taking advantage from a short-lived tax holiday there. But it's also, there's some escalation on the maritime and shipbuilding front. China sanctioned 5 American subsidiaries of the South Korean shipbuilder Hanwha Ocean. That's after Washington alleged that China has engaged in unfair practices to dominate building, and now the two sides have imposed reciprocal port fees on each other that took effect yesterday. And indeed, South Korea did come up with a proposal of a $150 billion package as part of their trade deal with the U.S. called Make America Shipbuilding Great Again. And China's Commerce Ministry now says that the Hanwha's American subsidiaries have assisted the U.S. government's probes and measures against Chinese maritime and logistics and shipbuilding sectors, and that it is strongly opposed to it. So from shipbuilding to cooking oil to soybeans, the tension again is rising before an expected meeting between President Xi and President Trump in South Korea. JP.
Yeah, soybeans, ships, and sanctions, a sorry state of affairs for trade, it seems, based on the growing tension between the world's two largest economies. Elaine Yu, thank you so much for that very important update. Meanwhile, India is resuming postal services to the United States today after a 2-month halt. Shipments were halted in August when Washington scrapped the de minimis exemption that allowed low-value packages to enter duty-free. Now, India's postal department says it has put in place systems to collect U.S. custom duties upfront at a flat 50% rate. This also comes as a team of negotiators from New Delhi is headed to Washington to resume bilateral trade talks. Both sides are aiming for their earlier agreed deadline of fall to sign a deal. And those tariff risks are showing up in the IMF's forecast for the Indian economy. The fund trimming its growth projection for the next fiscal year slightly to 6.2% from 6.4% earlier. But for the current fiscal year, IMF lifted its forecast by 0.2 percentage points to 6.6%, citing strong momentum that's offsetting the hit from steep U.S. tariffs. Here's what the fund's managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, had to say about India.
I think India needs to stay that course of reforming the economy and, of course, like everywhere else, make sure that the small companies, the entrepreneurial spirit of startups is given space to flourish.
This also comes as we got fresh wholesale inflation numbers. Wholesale prices easing to 0.13% in September from 0.52% in August. A Reuters poll was expecting the number to come in at about 0.5%. Declining food and fuel prices seem to be fueling this cool-off. Wholesale food prices dropped nearly 2%, with vegetables plunging about 25%. The sharp moderation highlights easing input cost pressures. Pakistan and the IMF, meanwhile, are also reaching a staff-level agreement that will allow Pakistan to access $1.2 billion in funds. Pakistan had secured a $7 billion IMF bailout package just last year. Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb spoke to CNBC's Karen So about the progress it's made since then.
While we can never be complacent that we have made good headway in terms of the macroeconomic stability, so all measures, whether it's stable currency, FX reserves, the policy rate, the inflation rate, all moving in the right direction. And I think the reason I'm saying that we have made good progress is because of the external validation that we have received from 3 global rating agencies. And after a long time, we have now alignment between the 3 rating agencies, and all 3 have upgraded us during the course of this year. And on the back of that, because macroeconomic stability and structural reforms have to go hand in hand, and therefore taxation, energy, SOEs, on the public finance side, we continue to move forward. And therefore, the discussion that we had with the fund while the mission was there on ground in Islamabad.
Now, they also spoke about the country's economic resilience amid an expanding population and huge debt repayments. Here's what he had to say on what needs to happen next.
So I think what we need to do is to, go about it in a very considered way. Because, as you know, our country's history is slightly checkered in terms of boom and bust cycles. Because whenever we get into macroeconomic stability, we get into a gold rush and we want to go for growth. But because the country has been an import-led economy, we run into a balance of payment situation. So what we have decided and what we are very determined to to make it happen this time around is to go towards export-led growth. And therefore, in addition to other structural reforms that we have done, we have rolled out a very ambitious and bold tariff regime where we are bringing our custom duties, additional custom duties and regulatory duties down so that we can help, first of all, make our industrial complex more competitive and also help with the raw materials and the intermediate goods to become cheaper so that it helps with the export agenda.
What you're fleshing out around tariffs is completely the opposite of what the US is trying to achieve with its border taxes. How does that sit then in a world where tariffs and higher tariffs at the border are a major thing in the United States?
Yeah, I think there are sort of two ways of going about it. One, of course, US is a very strong bilateral partner. We're very grateful to them. And quite frankly, what and where we are and where we have landed with 19% tariff end of July, we find ourselves in a relatively good place with respect to our regional competitors. So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is that we have to look at it from our perspective. And our perspective is that we cannot continue to shield industries which have received protection for the longest time. And if we have to, because that's our imperative, right? I mean, if we have to grow, it has to have industries which are competitive and which can export. And therefore, from our perspective, and I'm very grateful to the World Bank Group as well because they helped us with the whole thought process as well. And if you recall, we were just talking about Singapore and sharing our experiences, that we feel this can be an East Asia moment for Pakistan in terms of liberalizing the economy.
Well, coming up, we will take a look inside India's data center gold rush as big tech giants pour in billions in investments. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Inside India. Google has announced its single biggest investment in India, a $15 billion artificial intelligence data center in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Spread over 5 years, the project will be based in Visakhapatnam and is set to become the company's largest AI hub outside the United States. This comes at a time when U.S.-India trade ties remain tense, with tariffs dominating headlines. Still, Google says the investment aligns with India's own AI mission and will create economic opportunities on both sides.
We're very pleased to announce a new gigawatt scale AI hub in Visakhapatnam. It's the largest AI hub that we are going to be investing in anywhere in the world outside of the US. It represents a capital investment over the next 5 years of $15 billion. And will scale to multiple gigawatts.
The massive project will add to the billions already being poured into India's data center space by global tech majors like Microsoft and Amazon, as well as Indian conglomerates Adani and Reliance. And the Andhra Pradesh government says the new AI hub will power India's role in the global digital economy.
Data is the new oil, and data centers are the new refineries. At this juncture, I believe it's not about Andhra Pradesh playing an important role in India, but India playing an important role on the global landscape.
Data center capacity in India is expected to surge nearly tenfold from 350 megawatts in 2019 to more than 3.5 gigawatts by 2030. And that's being backed by $25 to $30 billion in new investments. In fact, Nokia is also betting on the surge. The Finnish telco giant wants to double its data center enterprise and hyperscaler business in the country in just 3 years. Nokia says its new products, partnerships, and its R&D base in Bangalore will play a key role in capturing the opportunity presented by India's rapid digital transformation. And to talk more about this rapid digital transformation, we're joined now by Rajiv Ranjan, who is the Associate Research Director for Cloud and Data Center Services Research at IDC Asia Pacific. Just the man to help us get a better grasp of how quickly this space is growing out in India. Rajiv, thank you so much for joining us. This is the latest in the long line of data center projects in India. Just how many projects have we seen greenlit in the last 2 years? And how many more data centers might we see actually come to India in the near future?
Oh, great. Good morning, JP. Thank you for having me. And I think we are talking about an industry which has been growing tremendously in the last 2 to 3 years. I can't recall a number of projects, but I think there'll be a lot more data centers coming up in the country. Today, the data center demand is basically primarily driven by the digital transformation spending in the country, strong demand of public cloud services, and the latest thing is the AI. I think AI growth, AI is real. AI growth is going to be very strong in India, given the amount of talent which we have and the kind of AI services which are being, introduced every month, I would say. So I think today data center market in India would be around 1.2 gig. The installed IT capacity. We are expecting this size of this market to reach and hit at least 2 to 2.5 gig by 2027 and around 4 gig by 2030. So I think interesting times to come.
All right. So are there any concerns with regards to the current tensions between the U.S. and India with regards to trade negotiations? This was cited as being perhaps one of the reasons there was a slight momentary slowdown actually in the rollout. And given the fact that this is in an area, a tech area that's become more sensitive for the United States, are there concerns that this might derail or perhaps slow down the rollout of these data centers? Or is there nothing really to worry about, or perhaps worries are overblown?
Yeah, I think, the U.S. trade tariffs have impacted the overall trade between India and USA, but I don't believe it's going to happen or impact the data center industry materialistically. In the past 2-3 months, some of the hyperscalers might have delayed or put some of the deals on hold, but I believe that's more of a strategic decision from the hyperscalers, anticipating the demand from the market or maybe the demand for public cloud services in the country. If you see the data center construction or data center equipment which is required in India, a majority of it has been either manufactured domestically or it's been sourced from countries like South Korea, China, or Taiwan, be it servers, GPUs, CPUs, or maybe cooling equipment. But I believe there could be a temporary slowdown because of the economic uncertainty which some of the hyperscalers might be anticipating, but it'll definitely pick up. To give you one number, the total digital transformation spending in 2025 has been estimated to be around $48 billion in India. The next year, it's going to grow by 17 to 18% and hit somewhere around $60 billion. So we are actually going to spend $12 billion of digital transformation, and we need data centers for that. So I believe this
Right.
will have a very small impact, but it'll come back to its growth path very soon.
In fact, this goes back towards overall tech capex spending for various sectors. In fact, IDC did a recent survey, I believe, with regards to the impact on various subsectors within the Indian tech space, actually. And some might be more resilient than others in terms of spending. Can you share with us which sectors might be proving to be having a lot more appetite towards this data center and this tech capex spending, given the backdrop and all the uncertainty that you just mentioned?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great insight on that as well. I think we did a recent survey in the month of July, and we asked the respondents that which is the technology area which will be most immune to these tariffs or geopolitical tensions. And I believe IT infrastructure, IT operations, AI security compliance are some of the areas will be most immune. 48 to 50% of respondents are very positive of continued spending in these areas. And when we talk about security, risk, compliance, IT infrastructure operations, data center is a critical part. So I believe data centers would be among the top 3 technology priorities of spending. And I strongly believe the spending will continue to grow in the next 3 to 4 years in India.
All right, Rajiv, whenever we talk about data centers, we have to talk about the cost of powering these in terms of resources. We talk about power and, of course, water. We've spoken to a number of data center operators in this part of Asia in the last couple of months, and they keep on saying, oh, you know what? Liquid cooling has already solved some of the issues and concerns about water constraints. However, we are seeing that water consumption for these data centers continues to average around 5 million gallons of water daily. We're getting anecdotes of data centers in the United States putting tremendous strain on resources there. Help us make sense of this, because I thought liquid cooling was supposed to solve the water resource strain questions that data centers have. Help us understand where exactly we sit there, and is liquid cooling actually going to be effective, because it's going to be important for India's own water security as well.
Yeah, great question. I think liquid cooling is picking up. It is mostly the direct-to-chip cooling technology in India, which will definitely pick up in India and other parts of the world as well as demand for AI workloads go up. So typically, if you see a server rack inside a data center, which has an average power consumption of 10 to 25 kilowatts, up till that limit, I think air-cooled systems are enough. But as AI workloads come into the data centers and the rack density, power consumption per rack, server racks goes beyond 50 to 100 kilowatts per rack, I think we definitely need liquid cooling. Yeah, water will be a problem, but I think government has been supportive in that. Water data centers are certainly water guzzlers, but I think liquid cooling, it's basically uses a type of lubricant in that, a different kind of liquid, which is oil-based liquid for cooling systems. It has a good promising future now. I think most of them, the direct-to-chip and the direct-to-chip and the traditional liquid cooling will definitely gain more and more precedence. Immersion cooling as a technology is still early days, I think. But I think as enterprises are gearing up to deploy more and more AI services, both in public cloud and in co-location data centers, we will definitely see more and more liquid cooling. But in terms of cost, I think the power is another very important aspect. Most of the data centers are going the renewable energy pathway and looking to be completely running on renewable energy by 2030 or 2031.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess my question, Rajiv, with regards to water is that 5 million gallons of consumption a day. Can we see this actually decrease as liquid cooling and some of these other technologies are adopted more? And how soon might we actually see that come down? Because as these data centers roll out, as you see more of these 5 million gallons of water a day demands from these new data centers come up, it could put water resources strains even more on local communities in places like India and other parts of the world.
Yeah, right. Actually, that's why data center players have been very smart in selecting the locations where they want to put the data centers, where of course government is making such arrangements for the required amount of water. Of course, data centers consume a lot of water. You're right. I think the surge in the AI, the demand for AI workloads will happen gradually. It's not going to happen overnight. And liquid cooling as a technology, or the demand for water is also going to go up in a phase wise. cities like Mumbai or Navi Mumbai is mainly where all the data center hub are there in India. Places like Telangana, Bangalore, I think there has not been a very strong problem in terms of water. Government has been particularly supporting. Of course, we will need more infrastructure projects on that to meet that demand, but the growth will be steady. And I think it shouldn't be a bigger problem for India.
Yeah, Rajiv, last question. We only have about 2 minutes, but when we speak about India and its place in AI, because despite the huge amount of talent, some say that it's lagging because of certain gaps with regards to foundational AI that still needs to be developed more among the workforce. How important are these data centers in helping a country deepen its foray into artificial intelligence, especially since India might be seen as playing catch up to the likes of the US and China? How important are these going to be for India to try and at least make up that lost ground with regards to developing AI skills and the AI ecosystem there? Just quickly in about a minute and a half, sir.
Yeah, sure. I think India has the second biggest tech talent for AI. I think there's a lot of skilled people available in the country. Data centers will be a very critical component in this part. Most of the data centers which have been run by public cloud hyperscalers will house this AI workloads. AI workloads will go both on the public cloud regions as well as in co-location data centers. And as we see more and more AI getting adopted in the country, we will also see these workloads getting deployed in the edge data centers. I think from the skill point of view, it won't be a bigger concern. Rather than that, enterprises have to realize how much ROI they need to get it. They need to have the right governance policies, how to use AI, where to use AI, identify the use cases when they need to implement AI, and have an enterprise-wide AI strategy first in place. I think skills we will develop in the country. That's not a problem. What we need is AI governance, AI model, and enterprise-wide AI strategy in place. Data centers will become a very important critical component for that, and they will definitely drive the AI demand. In fact, data center demand will be driven by this AI services, which will flood the country now.
Absolutely. It seems that that supporting data center growth and AI growth will be intertwined moving forward, especially in India's case. Rajiv Ranjan from IDC Asia Pacific, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us understand the Indian gold rush towards data centers in a better way. Now, UK fintech giant Revolut is making its Indian debut, and we will be talking to Paroma Chatterjee, Revolut India CEO, right after this break. Stay tuned. You're watching Inside India. Welcome back. You are watching Inside India, but here are some of the stories we're keeping tabs on the meantime as well. Questions over the status of Hamas in Gaza are still swirling, following the signing of the U.S.-brokered peace deal earlier this week. President Trump had previously suggested Hamas could play a limited role in enforcing security operations on the ground, but he also wants the militant group to disarm within a reasonable period of time. This in accordance with the peace agreement. Here's some of what Trump had to say overnight.
They will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes. You say
because
quickly.
you always, everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them. Got it?
India is looking to provide humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza. New Delhi's immediate effort will be to send relief materials like medicine and sanitary items, amongst other essentials. India is closely monitoring the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas and is considering contributing to the rebuilding of Gaza City's infrastructure that was destroyed during the two-year war. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs expressed support to President Trump's peace plan and said, quote, it was in line with India's long-standing support for a negotiated two-state solution. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's government is getting some criticism domestically as Ottawa and New Delhi look to reset their strained ties, with India and Canada looking to revive ties and collaborate in critical minerals, trade, and agriculture. This according to a joint statement released from the governments this week. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand came out to stress that domestic security is her primary concern for our country's approach, and this is what she had to say on the matter.
From a Canadian standpoint, we consider it extremely important to protect the domestic population from foreign interference, from transnational repression, and from any contravention of the criminal code or the rule of law on Canadian soil.
Well, markets cheering up on the equity side. Let's see if cryptocurrencies are sharing the same kind of cheer. A quick check of where these crypto spot prices are trending now as we wait for the board there. You're seeing Bitcoin perhaps taking a bit of a breather now, just easing off down by about 0.6%. Ether also also exhaling to the same cadence, down by about 0.4%. But take a look at BNB US Coin Metrics and XRP, both in the green. So a bit of a mixed bag actually for cryptocurrencies so far in today's session. And of course, we are still counting down to the market open in India today, about 13 minutes before the opening bell. And so far, Gift Nifty futures are indicating another start in the green. But mind you, it is coming off of 2 straight days of losses. We'll see if Wednesday is the day where it actually snaps out of its recent funk. Take a look at the Indian rupee today, strengthening against the US dollar at 88.31 versus the greenback. Now, UK-based fintech firm Revolut has unveiled its India launch at the Global FinTech Festival held in Mumbai last week, marking its first foray into one of the world's largest digital payments markets and a key step in its global expansion plan. The digital payments app will allow Indian users to make domestic and international payments through the tie-ups with the Unified Payments Interface and Visa. This starting with more than 350,000 waitlisted customers later this year before a wider rollout. Revolut, which recently announced plans to expand its U.S. presence, is betting on India as a key driver of growth. The company aims to attract 20 million customers by 2030, focusing on the country's youth market. Revolut has invested over $53 million as well to localize technology to be in line with India's data sovereignty rules, making it the only market where it's done so. In fact, we're joined now by Paroma Chatterjee, who is the CEO of Revolut India, to talk about this momentous step in the company's future and perhaps its foray into one of the biggest payment solutions markets in the entire world. Paroma, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you actually started operations in India in 2021 and only launching now. So spill the tea for us if you can. What have you guys been up to over those 4 years, and then what do those operations mean in making sure that you can make this launch and be ready for this launch in 2025? What have you been up to, really?
Thanks for having me on the show. So since you asked this question, back in 2021, we actually started first by incorporating Revolut as an entity into India to do any operations. That, for a foreign company, takes a little bit of time. Once we had that, then we decided to go start off here in this market with an acquisition in order to get the Forex license, which is the 82. That firm was acquired in 2022. And the entire change of control was done by taking an NOC from their local regulator, RBI, etc. And the total transformation was completed by end of 2022. That is when we embarked on the ambitious project of localizing Revolut's global tech stack to make it fit for purpose for India market, as well as complying with the data sovereignty norms that prevail over here. While that project was underway in 2023 is when we applied for a domestic prepaid payment instrument license, which would give us the license to also operate in the domestic payment market. Cut to 2024, a year later, is when our Forex product was actually ready. And in the meantime, the local regulator, RBI, trusted us with the domestic PPI license as well, which was granted first, as it is done, as an in-principle authorization. And then we had to build out the domestic payment product. So 2024, we spent with our internal employees using and testing out the Forex card while we built out the domestic payment product. By 2024 and 25 beginning, we had actually finished that, and we submitted that to the regulator to convert our in-principle authorization to a full authorization. We got the full authorization in 2025, and we geared up for the launch, and we've done the reveal now. In the meantime, as you're aware, when we announced last week, we had 350,000 people on the wait list, which has grown to 370,000 in just a matter of a few days.
Wow.
And we look forward to be able to cater to the Indian audience with now a both Forex plus domestic payment product, which is unique in this market.
All right, so have you started processing payments and operations for these 370,000 users, or is there a specific launch date when they can actually start to get on the platform? Because I can imagine that there's a number of people in India that are frothing at the mouth to try and get on the platform and make these much-needed remittances or payments.
We just revealed the product last week, and right now we're first giving it to employees internally, dog fooding, if you will, to test it out with employees so that the product that we give to our external users is absolutely perfect and has no kinks to that. So once it has been used by employees and fully tested out is when we will then start clearing out customers from the waitlist. And once the waitlist is cleared out is when we will completely open it up. That's what the staggered plan is.
Well, we can't accuse Revolut of not being careful based on all the steady steps you've been making over the last 4 years. You know, one thing that's lost in the shuffle when we talk about the Indian economy is how big a remittance market India is. I think you're in the league of Mexico and China as being one of the world's biggest sources of remittances to India. How does Revolut plan to at least transform the way India manages remittances in the future? And how do you see yourself impacting this particular space?
I wouldn't say we're in the League of Mexico. We're actually double the number of inward remittances that was received in Mexico was received in India. We're by far the highest recipient of inward remittances, as well as a strong outward remittance contributor, with Indians sending money overseas to the 2 million Indian students who are studying overseas. Indians spent $31 billion in tourism and travel overseas in the last year alone. So there is an outbound corridor apart from the inbound corridor that you mentioned. So the overall plan is once we have our product with the customers here in India, we will make it the most seamless way for any Indian to make payments overseas, as well as bring the best-in-class interest rates that has been an advantage of Revolut's in the 39 countries that it has been present in so far. So bring that in for Indians as well when they travel overseas or have the need to send money overseas. And once we have a critical mass or enough customers in India, it'll make it really easy and literally the easiest for Revolut customers all over the world who are friends and family of Indians to send money back onto their Revolut account in India.
Yeah, so I stand corrected there. It seems that India is in a league of its own levels to this, it seems. I'm curious because I have you right now. What makes remittances and Forex costs, the costs of remitting Forex so high right now? And how does Revolut perhaps address some of those and make sure that you can remove that to make them a lot more affordable and cost efficient?
Yeah, I mean, statistically, I just spoke about Indian tourists spending $31 billion overseas last year. Out of that, $600 million was just in charges. That is how expensive sending money overseas or paying overseas is in India currently. The reasons driving that are a few. One is largely it has remained the bank's prerogative, where obviously the cost structure of a bank is superimposed on even the Forex business. Secondly, There are obviously a lot of due diligences that you're required to do from an anti-money laundering and knowing the customer and verifying the customer point of view. That unfortunately still is done using a lot of paperwork, which enhances the cost of that entire process, as well as verifying all those documents as steps. That's the second step. Thirdly, there are multiple rails that the money hops, starting from transferring to a pooled bank account in India to transferring it through different rails depending on the country onto a pooled bank account overseas, then transferring it to the recipient's bank, then transferring it to the user. So those 5 hops that the money takes when the money goes overseas increases both cost and time, as well as makes it a black box for customers where they have their heart in their mouth till the money reaches the recipient, and they don't know how much charges are going to get deducted and how much the eventual recipient is going to get. So what Revolut is doing against that backdrop is, one, we have completely end-to-end digitized that process so that the cost structure of verifying and paperwork is minimized, so that we have less costs in the model to overload onto the customer. Secondly, we have our own treasury management and our own hedging practices, which allows us to give our own rates. And that is why we took the 82 license here in India, which gives us the license to offer our own Forex rates to customers. And therefore, we're able to make the currency conversion at a more affordable rate because we don't have the cost structure of a bank. We don't have physical branches and etc. to overload our cost structure. We're a very lean cost company, and that is why we can pass on that cost to the customer. Thirdly, because Revolut has its own licenses overseas in the 20 odd countries where we're a bank, we can actually use the Revolut rails to make the transfer actually both quicker as well as more cost effective for the customers who are sending it. And we open the hood and make it completely transparent for the customers. They can literally track the flow of their money the way they can track a pizza delivery today, from the time that the money has left their bank account to what is getting deducted at any stage to when the recipient actually receives it.
Yeah, so it's more cost efficient, it seems, but as has been reported also, Revolut had to spend about $53 million to make sure that the platforms itself were compliant to some of the regulations out in India. How related was the spend to making sure that you had a more efficient platform? And what else did the $53 million entail with regards to making sure that you could comply or adhere to some of the specific norms and rules in India right now? Basically, just a better understanding of what that $53 million went into to improve the platform in the Indian case.
Broadly, 3 areas is what the capital infusion initially was for. One is even to get the licenses from the regulator, you need to give a regulatory business plan and show that you have funding which is commensurate to what your regulatory business plan is. So that was kind of the initial funding in keeping with our initial regulatory business plan. Secondly, it was to pay the salaries of really high quality talent, product managers, engineers that we got in to enable building out of that product. Third is obviously what you were referring to, all the costs that we had to incur in the actual integrations, API integrations, the tech build, the cloud that has to be hosted in India, all of that to build that out. These were the 2-3 areas that were primary areas of expenditure during the pre-launch stage. And we also expect this to fund the initial launch as well when we get into the market.
Now, this is also to make sure that you could comply with the data sovereignty rules out in India. Can you elaborate on how you made sure that you were compliant to that? What did that entail to be compliant with the data sovereignty rules in India?
That entails a couple of things here. First is your entire data storage needs to be on a separate instance of cloud, which is dedicated to India alone, starting from your primary data storage to your backup data storage as well. So we had to create 2 different cloud instances, point number 1. Point number 2 is all your customer information needs to actually be stored here and not sent overseas for processing, which means that everything from card issuance to card processing, etc., the entire engine had to be built locally on that cloud that I was talking about having built. It actually involved localizing of 60 plus Revolut services for India and 100 plus databases for India to comply with these norms. The other aspect is the onboarding. In India, as you'd be aware, there is a unique biometric identity that every individual has, which is called the Aadhaar. And the government and regulator mandates an Aadhaar-based onboarding and a video verification in order to enable an entire digital onboarding experience for the customers. So even that Aadhaar-based onboarding and video verification is the first time ever built for the Indian market that Revolut has done. So these are sort of the components that have gone into building this out locally.
Yeah, and I guess all of this comes down to also making sure that these payments, while they are quick and seamless for the end user, also are done in a safe manner, especially in this day and age where we're seeing a lot of questions about data security, hacking, phishing, for instance. How is Revolut approaching these? And are these the steps and measures you took perhaps in line with making sure that the site is not just fast and efficient, but also safe for users that might be concerned about this?
Oh, 100%. So just to share a few examples, one, even in terms of our onboarding, the local regulator mandates a set of sanctions checks on customers. We're not just doing those sanctions checks, but also doing sanctions checks prescribed by UN, OFAC, US, etc., so that any customer who's onboarded in India will be compliant with regulations anywhere else in the world as well. So we're being doubly careful about which customer comes on board. And for those customers, we're making it absolutely easy and seamless. Second, even before we have a single customer, we have a strong anti-fin-crime or fin-crime monitoring stack, starting from transaction monitoring to all the way to reporting of suspicious transactions and fraud monitoring. So we have built a pretty strong tech stack, and all of that has been through a local AppSec security, the audit by a third-party regulator-certified, CISA-certified auditor. It has been through InfoSec audit, as well as undergoing data localization audit as well. So we've built a system, audited it to make it fit for purpose, so that from the day we launch, we are confident of being robust and come good on the confidence that the regulator has put in us by giving us these licenses and keep the customers' money safe.
So, Paroma, it's a no-brainer to go into India because of how big this market is. But again, you're not the only player, you're only the only game in town. I believe some of your peers and competitors like Wise are already there, Payoneer, for instance. And it's proven to be, as with most industries in India, a bit tricky to actually try and carve out and sustain market share. How are you differentiating yourselves against some of your peers in this space? And is perhaps maybe rolling out the premium tier phase of Revolut India perhaps part of that strategy to differentiate yourself as well?
I wouldn't compare directly with the names that you took, like Wise or Payoneer, because they're purely focusing on sending money overseas, and that is not necessarily through the multiple licenses that we've got here. Ours is a composite payment product, which includes integration with UPI, with our own Revolut customizable UPI handles to enable every user in India to make easy domestic UPI payments as well. That is nothing that any Forex player offers in India. Secondly, we are also giving the card. It's not just a pipe that is processing transactions. We're also giving a card to every user, which is going to have rev points and therefore be a rewarding card for customers. And that is where the tiers also come in. You have the free entry-level product as well as premium subscriptions and metal subscriptions, on which people will get rewarded for their spends, whether it is within India or it is overseas. So I don't think there is any direct comparison. It's a composite product, and it is layered with a junior account as well, where customers can give it to their under 18 youngsters to start them off with responsible usage of money early on. So this is an all-in-one product, unlike any that is there in the Indian market.
All right. And any plans, perhaps just quickly, to roll out the premium tier subscriptions for Revolut India?
The entire product is going to go live together, which is why we spend the time building this out, so that we're not launching product by product and being compared with, like you said, compared with the likes of Wise just because we have only remittances. We've decided to wait, build out all the products and release the whole suite so that there is something for everybody in payments when they decide to come to Revolut.
All right, and with that, you've just differentiated yourself actually in making sure that Revolut's own case in the market itself is distinct and actually clear. Paroma Chatterjee, CEO of Revolut India, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're looking forward to the next exciting couple of months as Revolut continues its foray into this very big market out in India. Appreciate the thoughts and the time, ma'am. Well, coming up, we'll track how Indian markets are shaping up as they have joined the trading day. Stay tuned, we'll be back in about 2 minutes. You're still watching Inside India. About 7 minutes since the opening bell rang for India's midweek session. Let's see how they're doing on hump day. And so far, they are trying to clear that hump or that two-day losing streak they were in, up by about 1/3% so far at 25,237. Mind you, they're still trying to find their footing out in Mumbai, but so far the footing looks a bit more solid based on the first 7 minutes of trade. The Indian rupee also looking to be quite firm today and just strengthening itself to 88.29 against that almighty greenback. Let's look at some of the movers in the Indian markets today. And a quick check of shares of Tech Mahindra. The IT services firm beat revenue estimates in the September quarter, posting a 5% jump to nearly $1.6 billion. The rise was driven by growth in its banking and manufacturing businesses. But profits slipped 4% to about 12 billion rupees, missing analyst expectations. CEO Mohit Joshi says demand is stabilizing and expects growth in the second half, even as the U.S. market, which makes up half of revenue, remains weak. New deal wins came in at $816 million for the quarter, slightly higher than last year. Meanwhile, a strong set of numbers from ICICI Prudential. The insurer posted a 19% rise in its second quarter net profit. Premium income rose 10% to 118 billion rupees, helped by a sharper focus on traditional non-market linked products, which now make up almost 22% of its entire mix. Operating costs fell 17% on lower ad and staff expenses, while new business margins also improved. In the current quarter, GST exemption on health insurance is also expected to boost business even further. Meanwhile, let's also take a look at how shares of LG Electronics India are doing on their second day of trade. It was a bumper debut, that is, for the stock yesterday, surging after they started trading on the public markets, and it eclipsed the market cap of its South Korean parent. The issue was one of India's most subscribed billion-dollar IPOs. CNBC TV18's Hormas Fatakia takes stock of the listing yesterday in India's red-hot IPO market.
It was a record-breaking IPO, so the listing had to be equally record-breaking, and LG Electronics India did not fail to disappoint when it made its stock market debut on Tuesday, 50% premium in comparison to its issue price, and it did end its trading debut with gains of that quantum itself. Now, what that did is the fact that it gave the India unit a market value of over $13 billion, which is 40% more valuable than its South Korean parent, which is valued at just around $9 billion. And interestingly, more than $1 billion worth of shares were traded on LG Electronics India on its trading debut. It shows the kind of investor appetite and interest for that kind of a listing, despite the price being at a slightly higher point. But of course, there was interest in the IPO right from the onset, and that was also because of the valuation comfort that LG offers in comparison to its peers, the growth runway that the company is promising, and of course the market leadership position that it enjoys among a lot of the consumer appliances segment in the country. That was LG, but it's not been all hunky-dory for India's IPO market. On one hand, we have seen record-breaking bids, record-breaking listings for LG. The same has not been for a lot of the other recent IPOs. At least 3 of them are down anywhere between 25 to 30 or even 40% from their issue price, and some of them listed just last week with IPO sizes of anywhere $50 million or less. So it has been on both sides of the spectrum is this IPO market that we have seen over the last few days. Even Tata Capital, for that matter, the largest IPO of the year, had managed to list just around about its issue price and has done precious little in the 2 days that it has traded as a public company. So a very, very strong listing for LG Electronics India, but can't say the same for a lot of the recent IPOs of the country.
And LG's hunky-dory public debut in India comes roughly a year after its South Korean peer Hyundai Motor also listed in Mumbai around the same time last year. Shares of Hyundai have surged over 32% since the stock made its market debut. And we're going to leave you with live pictures from its first ever Investor Day in India, kicking off just a while ago. That's all the time we're going to have today on Inside India, but do keep watching CNBC because Access Middle East is in a bit.